Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining us again for another awesome webinar in our series that we're running for 2018. Today we are going to be covering the topic of diversity. I'm really excited. I can't wait for you guys to see what we have in store. One of my favorite people on the planet, actually, just recently got to meet him at HRTX DC. Torin Ellis will be speaking, so we'll get to him in just a second. I just needed to fangirl for a minute here. So, today's plan, housekeeping as always. Listen only mode. You can hear us, we cannot hear you. Please make sure to use your control panel to ask questions. Raise your hand. If we don't get to you, don't worry, we will. This is being recorded. I will make sure that Torin gets all of your questions answered. So if we don't get to them live today, we'll get to them after the fact. Follow along online as always using the hashtag #RDaily. You'll see some tweets going out with Torin's Twitter handle as well as our handle and our sponsors. So please follow along there. And again, just a reminder, like it says down here, don't just sit, raise your hand, ask questions. We're here to have some fun, we want to help, and we're all here to learn. So without further ado, I'm just going to thank our sponsors here, Code Fights. Thank you so much for being the reason we're able to have this awesome webinar today. And again, fangirl second, Torin Ellis, today's awesome speaker. I'm going to throw it to Torin to talk about himself a little bit, and then he's going to go ahead and jump right in, and we're going to have an awesome time. So thanks everybody for joining, and Torin, you're on.
You know, when William Tincup put out the announcement for this particular session, he put in the words loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. Kendrick Lamar. And for those of you who are on the webinar and familiar with Kendrick Lamar, you know that he's a pretty talented rapper. I'm not going to hit you with my rap skills this afternoon, but if it were me, I would have rocked some Eric B. and Rakim, How Can I Move the Crowd? Because that is exactly what I intend to do during this session on diversity. But first, let me just say thank you, Alexis. I appreciate having a couple of fangirls in the club, fan guys in the club, fan people in the club, because it's that important to me. Like anyone who knows me understands that I live and breathe for this conversation, to do this work. I absolutely love the work that I do. And so the title of this session is No Fairy Dust, We're Just Chasing Diversity. Completely appreciate the entire Recruiting Daily team for trusting my voice and allowing me access to their platform. So Torin Ellis, I'm here in Baltimore, Maryland. We call it Charm City. It's a place where I've been doing recruitment now for 20 years in July, 20 years in the month of July. Mostly high-tech sales leadership recruitment, executive level placement, and got tired of doing that around 2010 and started doing strategy work related to diversity, because I had always, in some way, done diversity-focused recruitment, sourcing. So here we are now. But this is the deal. For anyone who is on this session looking for some magical potion, some magical process, waiting for me to give you a silver dagger, something that is going to make it easier, might be the wrong webinar. Because really, there is no fairy dust in chasing diversity. So let me take the better part of the remaining 56 minutes and let's get started, because we are going to have a fun 1 hour session. The house burned in front of them, but they wanted the data to prove it. That is the audacity and the ridiculousness of making the business case. Convincing one of the obvious: if the smoke doesn't alarm you, the fire certainly should. Bernard Coleman, Chief Diversity Officer for Uber. I'm gonna let that vibrate for a moment. The house burned in front of them, but they wanted the data to prove it. That is the audacity and the ridiculousness of making the business case, convincing one of the obvious. If the smoke doesn't alarm you, the fire certainly should. Start the presentation with that, because since 2012, even up until now, the conversation has really been around, show me the business case for D&I. And I'd be okay with that, if people also said, show me the business case for hiring in general, but they don't. I'd be okay with that if they said, show me the business case for hiring white men or more women. They don't. They only say it as it relates to D&I, because although I know, and many of you know, that D&I is much more than race, we've allowed the media and corporate heads to paint this narrative around D&I being particularly around race, maybe around gender. And so since 2012, really for the better part of the last 30 years, we have been battling back and forth with trying to create a comfortable scenario, place, safe, where we can talk about D&I. And so for me, it really is around trying to ward off those individuals that are working to separate the D and the I. There are some people that are focused on inclusion and diversity. For whatever reason, they feel like they need to switch the order of the words. There's some people that want to just focus on inclusion, and I've even met a few from entertainment. I've met a few from technology that want to drop the word diversity altogether. And they just want to focus on inclusion. And I know that they mean well. I get it. But my position is that we need both words to remain together. It's a shared focus, separate but equal emphasis, handled by different people, mind you. The D is handled by one individual. The inclusion is handled by all. And so Bernard goes on to say that we can forget, in that article, forget the business case for diversity and inclusion. He goes on to say that we really need something around readiness, reaction, results, and being able to refine and repeat. You can find his article, Forget the Business Case for Diversity and Inclusion, on LinkedIn, and you can also find it in Forbes. So today we're going to look at efforts being greater than initiatives. You know, there's a whole swath of individuals out there paying lip service to diversity and inclusion efforts, but not, initiatives, but not the efforts. And I stress that because it's extremely important. D&I cannot just be another program. You know, you put a little flag up and it's something that we're doing like right now. You see, all of the cool folks are at SourceCon. Some of the cooler folks are here on this webinar. And there's even more cooler folks that are not in either of these two locations, and yet they still care about this work. But in their respective organizations, you got folks running around waving flags for initiatives, but they're not really committed to putting forth the work and putting an effort in place. Today, we're going to also talk about igniting leaders to lead. And that's extremely important because I need the leaders to lead. One of the first things that I do when I go into any engagement and evaluate any organization as it relates to their D&I efforts, I review the meeting and the travel schedule of their leadership. And what it tells me is that if they are meeting with people, organizations, entities, interests around diversity and inclusion, then there's a piece of criticality that they are actually paying to this effort. If they are traveling to conferences and events and symposiums and seminars and other, then there is another piece or aspect of criticality being given to this, and that they are allocating company resources, i.e. their face time and money. And so I appreciate that, but we want to ignite leaders to lead today. The third thing that we want to do is transparency and value. Really being able to come down to some honest conversations around what moves the needle, what extends the conversation, and what changes the defeated and punitive narrative of today. So if you don't mind, Alexis, let's rock with the efforts and maybe then follow that up with the initiatives tag. But I want to kind of get into it because this is the easiest part of the conversation for today, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the heat. So for a lot of people, I really think that it's a hard thing for them to do when they think about efforts versus initiatives, or efforts being greater than initiatives. So I said it's probably good if we just put some words up that kind of symbol what it takes for you to have or display an effort. What you'll know when you engage with me on social media, if you talk to me live, if we exchange some emails or text messages, that I am very committed to doing this work, and I'm always going to push you or force you or challenge you on what's your effort, what type of activity do you have in place? What's the velocity around what it is that you and your team are doing? How are you measuring what it is that you have in place? Are you calibrating that? Are you building relationships? And we'll talk about relationships a few slides down. What are you doing on the effort side versus the initiative side? Initiatives are really ambitious and kind of like steam. They here now and gone tomorrow. There's really no hard metric, a hard goal associated with it. It's just kind of relaxed. Been inside a number of organizations that really don't have a clear picture around why it's important and how to go about doing this work. And what I've found is that, the truth of the matter is that there are some individuals that just do not care about D&I. And I get it. And those are not necessarily the people that I'm interested in working with. And I'm certainly not encouraging you to fight hard inside of your organization against them. We got to pick and choose our battles. I get it. But I'm really interested in working with organizations and people that don't necessarily know how to do it, don't know where to get started. Organizations that have done some things and feel like they can meter up or down. Those are the organizations, those are the types of people that I care most about. So Alexis, when we look at submitting a contribution, here's what becomes critically important. In the very beginning, when you are working hard to connect your recruiting initiative to, or your recruiting efforts to a D&I initiative, it is critically important that you have some defined direction. I think the overarching piece for me is that every organization is entirely different. There is not one organization with the very same DNA. Similar, sure, but not the same. And so I think for your respective organization, for each and every individual on the webinar, you should have a defined direction in your organization. You should have a geography in which you need to do this type of work. You should be in a position to build existential partnerships because they are going to be crucial in your being able to do this work. So when you have what that strategy looks like, whether it's hitting one of the 5,280, colleges and universities in the country, not 10, so many, I look at so many organizations and their college recruiting schedule is like 7, 10, maybe 15 organizations. There are some outliers, people like Ernst & Young, 250 to 300 schools. I know they have a different bucket of money to pull from and some different resources, a different reach, a different geographic footprint for their offices. I get it. I absolutely get it. But we can do better than 3, 5, or 7, maybe 10. So I share that number, 5,200 plus academic campuses around the country. You should be able to put a defined direction and a geography in place, but you need to begin to build some of those existential partnerships. You care about people of color in technology. You have organizations like the Executive Leadership Council. You have the Information Technology Senior Management Forum. You have so many organizations out there that are not being tapped. We are not collaborating. We're not reaching out to, we're not going to their annual events, their quarterly events. We're not including them in our Boolean search strings when we are on Google. We're not interfacing with their people, their executives, their office holders. We're not connected to others on LinkedIn and some of the other platforms. Members of these organizations, incredible organizations with incredible people, and they're people just like you and I. They belong there and they are associated with your organization, but we're not tapping into them because we're so accustomed to this defined way of a Boolean search. We're going to look for a first name or a similar name. We're going to look only for a college or university, the ones that we've been accustomed to. We're going to look inside of a predefined geography, only because that's where we've always looked in the past. And so I get it. But what are you supposed to do when you know that everything around us is changing? Geographic landscape is changing. Demographics are changing in terms of diversity. Workplace demographics are changing as it relates to millennials. You got a constant and incessant need for a transfer of knowledge, of networks, of processes. So how are you going to keep and or move that mind share, all of that intellectual horsepower and capital? How are you going to shift it from where it is right now to a new person? Where are you possibly going to be able to find it so that you can begin to cultivate and to nurture that? We got to extend our geography. And I'm not saying that you do it in a crazy way. I'm just simply saying, look at your recruiting strategy of the past, put your plans out for all of 2017. What did that plan look like? Maybe even go back as far as 2016, and then look at how you can make some edits to change how you achieve a new level of result in 2018. Develop a really rich list of resources. So you have places like diversitydata.org, where you can create customized reports describing over 100 different measures of diversity, of opportunity, and quality of life in like 362 of the top metropolitan areas in the country. Diversitydata.org, an incredible resource. And I have several other resources, National Equity Atlas. There are just some great resources that are out there that are not necessarily included in how we are going about doing our D&I planning so that we can put forth an incredible effort. But we need to look at some different resources, consider how we search for different resources. I always look for social justice organizations. I look for racial equity organizations. I tend to look for gender equality and income parity serving organizations, or put those phrases inside of Google and see what comes up in a particular area. Because those individuals from the socially conscious aspect, they have boots on the ground, if you will, in respective geographies, cities. And I reach out to the executive director, the director. I reach out to maybe case managers. I reach out to program managers, trainers, people that do implementation. I talk to them because they can give me the lay of the land. They can talk to me about movement inside of a city. They can talk to me about the comings and goings of organizations. They can talk to me about press and business happenings on the ground that I'm not familiar with. They can talk about movement inside of communities that I absolutely have no way of knowing, none whatsoever. So I try to reach out to socially conscious organizations and include them in my mix of effort, or my arsenal of effort, if you will. There's a great deal of public knowledge that needs to be pulled and tapped into. And so I would encourage you as a recruiter, if you're really serious about D&I, then spend some time moving outside of the familiar channels. Yes, I get it. The tools, the Chrome extensions, search strings, those things are important. But we have an incredibly important responsibility to architect high-powered and diverse teams. And so if that is our charge, and we know how important our charge is, then we need to be willing to extend the boundary, the border of how we do the work that we do. And I think that in the end, those that we report to and support, will appreciate how we go about doing this work. I know that Alexis and Ryan and the Recruiting Daily team have a different experience than I do. And if we were working to try to make some magic happen, I'd really get in a room with them and say, look, share with me what your experience and expertise is. And let's put that on the table so that we can have a different and better, more fortified strategy. And then last but not least, my personal experience is extremely important. So one of the case studies for me that I think is incredible, and I think I did peer knowledge already, Alexis, I think I did peer knowledge. So we can go to Red Ventures. One of the important pieces for me is Red Ventures. I absolutely love their recruiting team. I love their TA leader, Ted Prendergast. He came or went to Red Ventures from Target, left Minneapolis, moved down to the Carolinas, and said that he was going to take over and run TA for this incredible organization. But when he got there, he didn't necessarily like what he saw. Not that it was bad, but that he knew it would not help him in his desire to deliver D&I or diversity and then be able to nurture inclusion in the organization. So one of the things that he did was he hired more diverse recruiters. Off the top, he made it his business to hire more diverse recruiters. So I would say to you and your organization, really start with your team first. If D&I is important, look at your team. And I am not in any way suggesting that a certain person can't do D&I or a certain person can't do diversity sourcing or recruiting well. Not saying that at all. I'm saying you should and probably will be more effective if you in fact have a diverse team of recruiters and sourcers. Second thing that he did was he started participating in mentoring programs in and around the Charlotte area. Real simple. Like no magic, just real simple. Let me get out from behind the walls of the organization, the cubicle farm that I'm in. Let's get out in the community and let's start participating in mentoring organizations. And what he found is that he would begin to rub shoulders with parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents that may have been dropping young people off. And that allowed him to strike up conversations, and those conversations were taken by those individuals and seeded into their social media networks and into their small communities, their churches. And then he started getting people reaching out. He started getting a diverse mix of people. And so then he started encouraging his recruiters to participate in mentoring organizations, various organizations. And it sounds like, Torin, I mean, I've been doing that. I get it. But a lot of us have not been doing it. And we need to consider doing that. The people that we want are in the community. All we need to do is get out there. We can't hide behind our keyboard, especially if the result that we've been trying to get to has been elusive to us. We have to get out into the community. He started setting up discussions inside of the organization and how the company was perceived in the Charlotte area. And those hard conversations with the leadership, with sort of an outside panel of observers, if you will, led them to some revelations. And, you know, for privacy and confidentiality, we won't talk about them, but they led them to some revelations around the organization. And they were able to make some changes. Last but not least, he recognizes that data can often be manipulated. And that's one thing that he will always share to you. If you ever talk to Ted Prendergast, he will always tell you that the data can be manipulated. And so many people are spending time comparing themselves to a Facebook and a Google or some other large organization when in fact, it's really not the same. It's okay for you to have them on your radar of consideration, but it's just totally different. We said it in the top of the webinar, and I will reinforce that. You can look at the data, but just understand that organizations tend to manipulate the data the way that they want you to manipulate it. Ignition is greater than lagging. So when we talk about leaders, igniting leaders to lead, this is an incredible circle for me. And I keep the circle front and center because I'm always focused when I go into an engagement, whenever I'm inside of a conversation, this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at number one, are you empowered? If you are sitting in front of me and you say that you care about D&I, I'm looking to see, are you empowered? Has your organization given you the resources that you need? But more importantly, do you feel strong enough in your voice to be able to go ask for them? Are you empowered? Are you present? Like, are you really, really present with this work? Because if you're not, if you're distracted, if you're not really interested in it, if you're not really engaged in it, then it's going to become one of those steam-filled initiatives, those floating initiatives that we talked about in the beginning. Are you really present? I'm looking at your ability to strategically explore solutions. This is the circle. This is all I do. And I can ask you the questions, and I'm hoping that you will ask questions, but Are you really strategically engaged and thirsty and curious about how you can get to a new solution? Not a measurement per se, but a new solution, a new experience, a new result. Are you willing to put forth the tactical excellence necessary to get there? Far too often, people are willing to just simply do a little bit. Like I have one thing that I ask clients when we go in, give me 3 of your killer email subject lines around D&I. You'll be surprised at how many people cannot answer that. I want 3. Give me 3 of your killer email subject lines. Oh, I know. Give me 3 of your bomb voicemail messages when you're reaching out to someone around D&I. And then let me compare that to the 3 that you lean on the most as it relates to general population or regular recruiting. I want to see what your tactical efforts look like. And are you willing to refine them? Are you willing to calibrate up or down to make them even better? Are you willing to be like a person in the military, like a Green Beret or something of the sort? Are you willing to be like a Navy SEAL and really, really, really work to make this happen? And then last but not least, are you calibrating? And so when I look at igniting leaders, I'm really looking at the forensics of the work that we do. I'm evaluating the culture and the representation. It's always important for me to get in and look at the current culture of the organization, how they are representing that organization, and what we need to do to modify the story. I'm looking at the current culture of the organization, how they represent that organization, and what needs to be done to modify that story. I'm sitting down with leaders so we can archetype the type of employee that hiring managers really, really need. Not the one that they put on paper, but the one that they really need. And when I say really need, the one that they need 18 months from now. And the reason I choose 18 is because historically, that's where attrition tends to spike, 12 to 18 months, somewhere between 12 and 24 months. So I'm looking at that 18-month mark. How do you need a person to grow inside of your organization? I don't want you to necessarily hire a person today that can do everything that you need done. I want a person who can grow with your organization, that's going to stay challenged and engaged. That's the type of hire that I want to make in general, as well as with D&I. I want a growth related hire. So let's try to archetype the real employee that we'll need 18 to 24 months from now, that we can then motivate and encourage to stay 24, 36, 48 months out. I look at how we, as a leader, or how leaders evaluate the brand and the recruitment value proposition. Do they really have a vested interest in it, or are they just kind of moving bodies through? Kind of hurts us in the work that we do. I go back to how important we are in this equation. So often we as recruiters are kind of painted as a necessary evil. Damn right, we are necessary. We are an incredibly important group of people. And I don't take shots or shorts to anybody in the organization. And I never allow my peers, you all, to take shots and shorts. We are incredibly important individuals. So what's the value prop? What's being placed around the effort and the work that we're doing? And then I look at a corrective strategy meeting with leadership. Always encouraging leaders that you have to be willing to walk into a room with your executive team, your C-suite leaders, your board of directors. You have to be willing and able to walk into a room and have corrective meetings with them. You got to be able to talk about what's working, what's not working. You can't do that just with the person sitting to the left or to the right who really doesn't have any authority. And it doesn't matter if you get shot down. You just got to go and have that conversation. And you got to go and have it again until they start to recognize and are able to see what you are saying is manifesting and how it's impacting the work that is or is not being done. But you need to be able and in a position to have that corrective strategy meeting with your leadership. As leaders, we need to be able to go and speak to leaders because D&I is that important. So like right now, one of the things that I'm challenging a lot of my clients to consider is the 4-year degree absolutely necessary? Is there some other alternative that we can consider as we look at the cost of school skyrocketing, that states are not necessarily investing in the students the way that they used to 15 years ago? So now the burden of school is on the back of the individual. Wages are depressed than that of 1999. So there's so many different factors in play. And so while the numbers suggest that there's a great deal of students on college campuses, we're not really looking at how many of those students are matriculating all the way through. And when they do matriculate through, has the agenda or the syllabus aligned with what we really need inside of the workplace? So then I go back to the question, is the 4-year degree absolutely necessary, or is there another way for us to archetype who that actual employee is? I need to be able to have that corrective meeting with leadership. Alexis. I'm also looking for leaders who are willing to talk about, the need for resources, people, and money. They're definitely needed in the equation. There's a stat that I used to share with people, and I actually don't share it often anymore because I can't remember where I found it. But it says that for every $10,000 you see in terms of income, an increase in income, you see a 7% decrease in terms of representation of people of color. So if I'm at $100,000 in terms of compensation, I'll see some percentage of representation of the underrepresented, if you will. But if I raise that up to $130,000, then that underrepresentation number, it kind of gets bigger, or their presence in the workplace decreases. And so I know that if I'm going to change representation of the underrepresented, then I need to be able to allocate some people and some money and some time to this equation. And I'm not going to necessarily get it done today. I may not get it done in 2018, but I need to be committed. Sure, I can have a timeline. I'm not saying that it needs to be an open checkbook and open allocation of hours and open allocation of manpower, woman power. I'm not suggesting that, but I need to be committed. So I do need to be I need leaders that are willing to walk in and have some idea of what they need in terms of resources. I also need leaders that have a capacity for getting this work done. They're capable of getting it done and they're competent. If you are a leader and you are or working with leaders that are not competent about this type of work or what it takes to recruit or underrepresented talent, if you're not working with a leader who is capable of doing it for whatever reason, because their biases are too strong, they're not willing to relinquish their marriage to their biases, then we need to find an alternative way around them so that we can get underrepresented talent into our workplaces. Again, we have a responsibility. The shift is happening in terms of workplace demographics, country demographics. We have a responsibility to guard how we build high-powered teams. And so in order for us to do that, we need all able and willing to chip in. And when we find people that are resistant, we need to figure out how to get around them. I let nothing stop me from getting this work done. Nothing. And I want you to have the same attitude. And then last but not least, we have to prioritize and, put some sort of reporting in place. And the better or more often we do that, then we will be able to look at what are some of the trends, what has happened, what's not working, what's working wildly successful, and we can do more of that. We can do a little bit less of this. But again, if you have an effort, then you will have all three of these in place: resources, capacity for doing, and time. If you have an initiative, then you won't have these three in place. You'll just be doing something, whatever something looks like. But I need you to have all three of these in place so that you are addressing the small areas that we've talked about. An additional case study before we get out of here. I love Pinterest and Candace Morgan. Her entire team out in Silicon Valley are doing some incredible work. She joined the organization, I think maybe 2 years ago. She came from Catalyst, an organization that does some really, really amazing research and work. But Candace and her team, they really set in and they said, we have to do a different, we have to go about this entire D&I stuff a little bit differently. So number one, they recognized that setting goals just was not enough. Setting goals of X number of hires on a yearly basis, just not enough. setting goals of percentages, just not enough. You know, I like to tell people that my claim to fame came in 2015 at SourceCon, which is, as a matter of fact, happening right now. 2015, I kind of shocked the audience because I said that I really didn't believe in diversity in numbers. And I said that if Google fired half of their workforce right now and did nothing but hire underrepresented talent, it'd still not make a difference. And the entire room was quiet. So setting goals is not nearly enough. Pinterest understood that. Pinterest also understood that they needed to chase being uncomfortable. One of Candace's biggest things is she was willing to force uncomfortable conversations in the organization. The leadership was willing to embrace and chase down uncomfortable conversations in the organization. And it was in those uncomfortable conversations that they recognized that we certainly can be doing much better. It was a few embarrassing missteps in public that forced them to have some conversations, and they recognized that they too could be doing better. And it's not about embarrassing people. It's about being able to own up to where we are. Once again, I don't need you to be perfect. I share with my clients often. I have one incredible client, incredible organization, 60,000 employees, $25 billion in revenue. And when we got together in January of last year, he kept saying to me over and over and over again, Torin, I want to be best in class, best in class, best in class. When we do this engagement, best in class, best in class, just kept using the phrase best in class. And so finally, after like 30 times of him saying it, I said, what? How do you define best in class? And so he started pointing to all these organizations. And I said, but none of those organizations are really doing a wildly successful job of D&I. Like, not at all. He said, well, how do you know? I said, well, I promise when we do the final report, I'll show you what they're doing. And then you'll see what you all are doing, and you'll understand that really you're all doing about the same, and it's okay. So be uncomfortable, be willing to be uncomfortable. Don't necessarily feel like you have to measure yourself against someone else. Just be willing to explore that which is not resonating well with you, your team, other employees, and let's figure out how to change that. They also understood at Pinterest that doing D&I better delivered a more efficient hiring process. Like they were bringing more people through from the beginning, prospect stage, to the applicant and candidate stage, and ultimately to onboarding. One of the things that I share with all of my clients is that the onboarding process starts the moment a candidate or a prospect hits your website or engages with your LinkedIn company page or finds you through a hashtag and it led them to something very interesting. That onboarding process begins then. I know there's an official onboarding process. I'm just simply saying we should be thinking about our brand from a standpoint of I have you hooked the moment you came into this conversation. Hopefully you have been hooked on my voice because there's some degree of onboarding that takes place, and it will run for a period of 6 months. That's what I tell all of my clients. Your onboarding will run for a period of 6 months after they get their badge, their desk, their computer. But they understood at Pinterest that doing D&I better delivered a more efficient hiring process. And I submit that you will as well. You will find that everybody working through just feels so much better about the organization. And then last but not least, at Pinterest, they were really prepared from the very beginning to course correct when course correction needed to be done. And so because they had that mindset, it made it very easy for them to change their diversity numbers in an 18-month period. And since that 18-month period, they've been rocking and rolling ever since. We're almost done. So if you don't mind, Alexis, let's get to the transparency and value slide. We can move past this slide and actually let's go to yep, you got it right there. So really what it comes down to for me, when you think of everything that we've talked about, everything, and when we think about all that you all are doing, it really comes down to what they profess in the Blue Ocean Shift, an incredible book that talks about how to move from a red ocean, comparing yourself to others, typically like-minded others, to a blue ocean where there's just a world of opportunity out there. I want you to consider the blue ocean shift. And the one piece that they tend to refer to is you have the ability to evaluate what's going on in your organization. And there are some things that you can raise up that you need to be doing that you're not doing. There's some things that you need to reduce. Unfortunately, you're doing them, but you're doing too much of them. There's some things that you really need to erase. And as it relates to D&I, there are certainly some things that we probably should erase in our efforts. Like number one, we would probably want to erase sending out an email saying I'm doing a diversity hire. Probably not a good look. Let's just change that language and let's figure out how we can get in front of underrepresented talent without necessarily saying something that could be deemed offensive or patronizing or lukewarm. There's a large contingency of people right now, and I will speak from an African American standpoint. There's a large contingency of people that are rolling around our offices that feel like D&I efforts are just not to be taken seriously. They feel even worse because they feel like Me Too and Time's Up has now taken more emphasis than true D&I efforts. Not saying that I agree with it, but I am telling you that it's present. So we need to maybe erase some things from the way that we do our work to figure out how to do this work better. And all in all, what we're trying to do is create value. And if you're going to be true to transparency and chasing value, then again, you need to have resources, you need to have representation, and of course, you need redundancy. Without that, you can forget it. I need resources, I need representatives, I need ambassadors, I need evangelists, I need all hands on deck. And then I need you all to repeat what it is that you're doing. I need you to remember that the onboarding process really does require some plus and minus calibration. There's probably a few things in the onboarding process that impact our ability to create true inclusion. So how can we change that process so that people are happier, people are getting on social media, they are telling their friends, and they are directing them to us as recruiters so that we can make our job a little bit easier. We need to demystify this merit-based argument that continues to be out there, or said another way, that I don't want to lower the bar. We can't allow people in our organization, or shall I say, we can't let that go unchecked in our organizations. This is where it comes back to you finding your voice. If you're on the webinar, you're looking for ways to do this work better, then find your voice. You have to have a voice in the organization and be able to stand up to some of this, craziness that people are spewing and spouting from their lips. And some of them are doing it innocently. They just don't know any better. It's okay. You can be corrected as well. And I can do that out of love, a place of love, a position of love, because of what I feel for this work. And then last but not least, we really need to understand that if we are chasing transparency and value, that cultural inclusion and emotional intelligence, bar none, are going to set as a foundation for the work that we do. Without emotional intelligence, we can forget it. We have too many people running around without empathy. We have too many people fighting hard for what I'm about to show you in the next slide. I always say that people do the best job of hiring people. That's the bottom line. So I'm going to work with a high degree of, just cultural sensitivity, emotional intelligence, trying to be present, listening far more than I talk, just being there, if you will. And I found that it just goes a long way in my being able to be successful in doing this D&I type of work for a variety of organizations. Couldn't do a presentation without dropping a few tools. I know folks like tools, and so here are some of the ones that I absolutely appreciate. The first one is Atypica. Atypica was started by Laura Gomez. Laura was one of the first, if I'm not mistaken, 25 employees at Twitter. She was certainly in the first 100. She has since left Twitter and started a company called Atypica, Atipi, Atypica, Atipica. And what it stands for is atypical in Spanish. And her platform allows you to peer into your current ATS from an EEOC standpoint, as well as who's already there standpoint. So we always have these talented individuals hidden inside of our ATS, but we always start every search, well, not always, but we tend to start new searches by going outside when we really have jewels and talented individuals inside of the ATS, and Atypica allows you to get in there and find them. Everybody knows who Greenhouse is, incredible ATS. Teamable is a social media play. Their platform allows you to really get inside of the social media networks of your current and existing employees so that they might be able to spread the word and bring a diverse talent in. Again, a bit of a challenge because if we have a homogenous workplace, we may or may not necessarily be able to peer into social media networks and get the diversity or the underrepresentation that we might be looking for. But nonetheless, Teamable allows you to do that. WePow, video technology, Seek Out, love the work that they're doing over at Seek Out. They really make it easier for you to do what you are trying or attempting to do on LinkedIn. You go and do a great search on LinkedIn. It brings you back 10,000 people. You scroll through 100 pages and you find 10 underrepresented individuals that are talented. Seek Out actually allows you to kind of filter in a way that is so incredibly efficient, and you can really look inside of organizations. You can look in the landscape of organizations and find out who's there, who's doing work and doing what, and who might be an underrepresented consideration for you to reach out to. Love the work that they're doing over at Seek Out. The reason why I put Blavity up, I'm
Jumping
sorry.
in, no,
Go
don't
ahead.
worry. We have a great review actually on recruitingtools.com about Seek Out. So if anybody wants to head over to recruitingtools.com, actually a few of these are featured on there. So please check that out. Sorry.
That's right. Cool. Blavity, the reason I put Blavity up is because, again, we have to extend the boundary, and it's not just about tools and Chrome extensions. It's about conferences and events and other outlets and platforms. And so Blavity is building one of the biggest tech conferences outside of South by Southwest for people of color. So I love the work that they're doing. Blavity really is an online blog type news platform similar to like Huffington Post, but they've spread their wings, and it may be a great consideration for some of you as it relates to getting out in the public and the community and being able to interface with talented individuals. Last but not least, I have SiriusXM on selfishly because I'm on SiriusXM every Monday, but I have Pandora on because to me, Pandora is probably one of the best one-to-one marketing vehicles on the planet. When you register for Pandora, you give them your email address, you give them your zip code. And so if I am from Baltimore, but will be in Miami later this week, I'm still going to see advertisements from Baltimore. I'm going to still be able to see job advertisements and employer branding from Baltimore. So I may be in Miami because I'm recharging. I may be in Miami because I'm attending a conference. I may be in Miami because I'm looking to, whatever. I mean, Pandora is an incredible one-to-one marketing vehicle, and I have those two at the bottom because not enough employers are utilizing the power of radio, if you will, or digital radio. And Nielsen will tell you that more people of color get their news and information from radio than any other source. So I would highly encourage you to consider looking into the offerings of Pandora and or SiriusXM to see whether or not they are viable options for you. So last but not least, if I'm not mistaken, we may have one more slide, Alexis. So in the end, this really comes down to D&I is nothing special. It should just be built into the process. Number one. Number two, I want you to measure results just as you would any other. I was at SRSC speaking 2 weeks ago, and someone in the back of the room asked me this question. Well, how do you measure, the efficacy of D&I? I said, well, how do you measure the efficacy of all other recruiting? Whether it be investing in a platform, whether it be in spending money to attend an event, whether it be in subscribing to some news series or being a sponsor or whatever the case may be. The very same measurements that you use for recruiting are the same measurements that you would use in terms of evaluating your D&I efforts. I'm not saying at all to not evaluate them. I'm saying that they don't necessarily need to be any different. And then the third and final thing is just to simply be authentic, committed, and present. And as long as you can do that, I guarantee you, you will change your results by the summer of 2018, and then they will look different by December of 2018. Alexis?
That was awesome. I have a couple questions I wanted to throw out, and then we can go ahead and we'll wrap things up because it is actually already 10 to 3, and time flies when Torin is having a good time. So, a couple questions that came in. You had mentioned earlier about recruiters are a necessary evil. There's a couple other of those in the world. So, what do you feel the biggest challenge for D&I is with our current political climate? Boom.
So because it's recorded and people will
Yep.
have listen, I'm just going to be honest with you. The current political climate does not make this work any easier. I said it in the beginning and I reinforce that. It does not make our doing this work any easier. So when I say you need to speak up and you need to have your voice, I mean that. You need to be able to go into your workplace and you need to be able to build the business case and show, and I know it kind of goes against what Bernard Coleman said. I'm just simply saying you need to be able to speak to your hiring managers and your leadership around the value of having a D&I initiative and doing this work and being committed to doing it. If you are a person who's afraid to speak up, if you do not have a spine to speak up, if you do not have the words to speak up, call me and I will personally try to help you craft that. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I want everyone on the conversation to have their voice. And so in this particular climate, it's just important and imperative that we be willing to be committed to doing this work, that we be willing to explore some new ways of doing this work, and that we understand that we may hit some more roadblocks, the same roadblocks and or new ones that we've experienced over the last 20 or 30 years, but that we must do it. Listen, I say this all the time. If we couldn't get D&I right when people had to come to work, how do we expect to get D&I right inside of a gig economy where we have so many people doing freelancing, we have so many people working remotely? How do you do D&I right when you couldn't do it and you had their full on attention? It means we have to do this work a little bit differently. So be committed.
That's awesome. Another question, and then we'll finish this up. You had mentioned earlier about college recruiting, and you visit campuses, but sometimes these don't matriculate, all the way through. They don't end up getting the degree. So what are good ways of reliable markers? How do you address people's fear of lowering the quality bar with these kind of hires? People that may not have the degree, like you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so again, I'm not suggesting that we lower the bar. I just simply say that there are other ways for us to find talented individuals, and that demands that we get out in the community. There was a website called bayareacodes.org that listed all of the code camps, for instance, in the U.S. I don't know if the site is back up. I did a webinar 2 weeks ago, and it wasn't up, so I'm not sure if the site was just going through some challenges then, but it was called bayareacodes.org. There are a number of coding camps in and around the country. The World Economic Forum just put out a report where they're going to release a new platform in April of this year where they're going to open source training and raising people up, not just in technology, but in a variety of different industries. You have Google that just made an announcement that they're going to offer their courseware on Coursera. They're going to be in that partnership with Coursera. You have universities like MIT that have their CS50 syllabus and entire curriculum online for free. So Alexis, you and I could both sign up for CS50 and learn computer science applications, if you will. I would reach out to them and find out, do you have names and listings and people who have taken the coursework? Because if they've gone through the coursework, you just didn't get credit for it. There may be some value in bringing that person in, taking a coding test, and then putting them in the interview process. So I'm just simply saying we need to get creative. The people that we want are in the community. Listen, recruitment is recruitment is recruitment. It all comes down to blocking and tackling and getting to people. We just need to find various and different ways to get to the people, but they are there. They are walking and breathing and living amongst us, if you will. So we just need to get in front of them. Make sense?
Awesome. Yes, that was great. You're just wonderful. I do want to thank our sponsor, Code Fights, again for this awesome webinar, sponsoring it, making it all possible. Please go and visit them, check them out. If there's any questions about them, put them here in the control bar, and we'll make sure that we get them directly to Code Fights as well. And I'm just going to throw it back to Torin to wrap it up so he can just talk about core of inclusion for a minute.
Yeah, so core of inclusion is something I'm incredibly passionate about. So I have it up. We're not going to do the conversation on March 8th as indicated by this slide. Unfortunately, Rosalind has a more pressing meeting than my conversation, but we have these organic conversations with incredible individuals in the space. And so the conversation that we will have will be in April. It will be with Daisy Dominguez with Viacom and Sharon Brodus from Microsoft, women who impact the workplace. It will happen in April. You can get more information by going to coreofinclusion.com, and you can follow me on all of social media at Torin Ellis. And I encourage you to do that. I'm not going to spam you. I'm not going to bother you or pester you. I'm not going to proactively try to sell to you. But I would ask that you just consider joining us on the conversation and or encouraging other people to join us, because every single conversation is rewarding.
Well, I think that about wraps it up. Thank you, everybody, for coming online today and sticking with us. It was an awesome hour. We could keep going, I'm sure, but we'll let everybody get back to their day, and you guys can keep an eye out for this recording that should be up on our website within the next 24 hours. So I hope everyone had a great time, and we'll see you with the next webinar. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.